back, everybody. My name is Jason. I'll be your host on this CFL talk show, Hussey's Huddle. In this video, I'm just going to explain one of my main concerns about this upcoming 2021 CFL season. But really quickly, before we get started, if you want to support the channel, the best way to do it is by hitting that like button and subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. You can also follow me in my social media links down in the description. I would really appreciate it if you followed my Twitter account or liked us on Facebook. Again, I would really appreciate it. And with that said, let's talk about what I'm concerned about going into this 2021 CFL season. So first off, before we get into it, I'm very well aware that a CFL season in 2021 might not actually happen. There's quite a possibility of that. However, as I expressed in a recent video, I do expect some sort of season to happen, and under the assumption that there will be a CFL in 2021 is where I am coming from in this video. So over the past month or so, the league has seen a number of players, some younger and some older, retire. It's pretty easy to come to the conclusion as to why. Many of these players haven't seen a cent of compensation since the 2019 season, aside from a small number of players who received a signing bonus in both the 2020 and 2021 off seasons. And with further uncertainty regarding the start of the 2021 season, many were quick to find other means of employment this off season. On top of not earning any of their 2020 salary, the league's 9 teams, according to various reports, colluded to cut player salaries down to the salary cap floor. So in other words, there's a maximum amount that teams can spend on players, and there's a minimum amount, and all the teams kind of got together and they said, let's spend to the minimum amount to cut our costs down. This forced practically every notable name in the CFL to restructure their salaries down to a lower number. Information on exact salaries is hard to come by in the CFL, but from what I gather, this particularly hurt players in the 150K to 200K range. In other words, this hurt the players that were established in the CFL who made a decent living playing in the league. For example, an established star like Winnipeg's Adam Bighill was set to make $260K in 2021, but had his salary cut down to $115K. If Bighill isn't a great example, then look at another star linebacker, Enoch Mwamba, who was set to earn over $200K this season, but had to settle for a new deal under $100K. Obviously, it was pretty easy for the public to look at the CFL players sympathetically when you take all of that into account. But then came the news of a little over a week ago. The CFL leaked a proposal that they've extended to the players that could lead to the league starting on time, or at the very least having a full season in 2021. The catch? The players would see a 20% reduction in their game checks for any games played in stadiums with no fans in attendance. At this point in the pandemic, that seems like the only plausible way to start on time, and while I understand from a business perspective why this has to be tabled, it's far from having no consequences. Which brings me to the point of this video. While I believe that this pay cut proposal will eventually be agreed to in some form or fashion, be prepared to start seeing a wave of retirements from CFL players. In fact, it may have already begun. While some of the recent retirements may not be directly related to this proposal, I think one extremely evident one is the retirement of Winnipeg receiver Bryant Mitchell. This guy just signed a contract with the team a month prior, and a couple days following the news of the 20% pay cut, he opted to hang up his cleats. I can't really understate how damaging losing established names like Mitchell will be to the CFL's brand. I mentioned this before on the channel, but so much of what makes sports enjoyable is the bond that we develop with our favorite players. This convinces us to buy jerseys, team merchandise, and most importantly, watch and follow our favorite teams. Obviously, with this 20% pay cut on the table, many players are bound to think that financial compensation is no longer worth playing in the league. And my fear is that the league will be largely unrecognizable to fans when it returns. Luckily, just because they still are scheduled to make in excess of hundreds of thousands of dollars, I doubt we will see any starting quarterbacks decide to hang up their cleats this offseason. However, players of all other positions will likely reconsider their commitments to the league in 2021. I was going to do a breakdown for how much players on minimum or close to minimum contracts would be making with a pay cut. But former receiver Ricky Collins Jr., who recently retired due to the circumstances around the league, broke it down nicely on Twitter last week. He says, if John, who's an American in this case, makes $90K Canadian for the season, he has to pay rent for 6 months in Canada. He has to find transportation for 6 months in Canada. And he has to buy groceries for 6 months. He goes on to say, so if John takes a 33% pay cut, which is referring to the restructured contracts this offseason, from the $90K Canadian, he's looking at $60,300 Canadian. Then he potentially takes another 20% pay cut. That's $48,240 Canadian to live off of in Canada. And then he adds that this is before converting back to US dollars, which half the league is American, so you gotta take that into consideration. They don't live here most of the time during the off season. So you get the idea. This isn't a pretty picture financially for CFL players, especially those that have grown accustomed to making a decent living in the league. This isn't to say that no one will be willing to play for that amount. There's a practically bottomless pool of football players to choose from. But many existing guys will ultimately decide that it isn't worth it. So that is a major concern of mine going into this season. But before we get out of here, I just wanted to close on a more of a positive note and shout out a couple of longtime CFL players who recently announced their retirements. The first is running back CJ Gable, who was just a really good all-around running back in the league for 7 years for both the Hamilton Tiger Cats and the Edmonton Eskimos. And the other guy is defensive back Delvin Breaux, who had an incredible career with Hamilton, and in between 2 stints there, had a 3-year stop in New Orleans with the Saints, and even had 3 interceptions in the NFL in 2015 for the team. And with that said, that is going to be the end of today's video, and I want to thank each and every one of you for watching. Once again, my name is Jason. If you want to support the channel, be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons for more CFL content just like this. Be sure to let me know in the comments what you think about this potential wave of retirements coming in the CFL, or you can tell me I'm crazy. Either way, be sure to voice your opinion. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.